ladies and gentlemen, and what a great pleasure it is for me to be here today. I want to speak with you about innovation. I want to speak with you about a whole new paradigm that I've created and I use called opportunity capture. And perhaps whilst I'm speaking, you may like to think about what these words mean. What's innovation mean? What's opportunity mean? How do you find an opportunity? I've developed a process which I'm going to share with you that shows you how to develop innovation in a systematic way. It amazes me when I go into large companies and I ask them, what's innovation? Nobody has a definition. If you don't know what it is, how do you know when you're doing it? I'll tell you one of the things that universities teach. This is what universities teach for innovation. Don't write this down. You won't have enough ink in your pen. This is university. Innovation is a process with a latent capacity to change the prevailing behaviour for a group of people who initially had a stable behavioural platform. Whoa. Does that help you? I don't think so. I love to keep things simple. I'm a humble engineer, and I think there's possibly many engineers in this audience. And so let's explore the subject of innovation, opportunity, and let's talk about some examples of how we've used this in companies worldwide with some stunning successes and some simple successes. I come from a platform that says this: there is no product, process or service in the world that is free from the opportunity to innovate. And if you wish to disagree with that, what you're telling me is what you do, use, think or play with today will be the same in 20 years' time or 50 years' time. And of course, that is complete nonsense. So let's talk about innovation and opportunity capture. And firstly, why we need to embrace these things. This is a graph of the performance of businesses over time. The timeline there for extinction of a business from start to finish of a business in the 1920s was 65 years. In the 1920s, a public company in the USA could expect to be around for 65 years. By the 1990s, that had fallen to 10 years, and today it's approaching 5 years. 5 years. If you are not constantly moving your products, processes, services and customer offering to an ever better place, you can be sure someone will move in and take your place. And we see many, many examples of this. I mean, I've just written some blogs on this particular subject about mission statements. Do you have a mission statement? Do you ever innovate your mission statement? And what does innovation mean? It means change it. It's interesting. I wonder what Kodak's mission statement might have been 20 years ago. It might have been, we are the premier company developing film emulsion and services for cameras. Perhaps that was it. Whereas Kodak today, virtually non-existent. I wonder what Hewlett-Packard's mission statement may have been when Hewlett and Packard started their business in the 1930s. These guys were engineers, I think, at one of the great universities in America, and they developed the first Wien bridge oscillator. Now, if you're not an electronic person, you won't understand that, but basically it's an instrument. Hewlett-Packard developed its business as scientific instruments, and they became premier in that business. In the last 15 years, they've morphed. They've moved their business. Their mission statement is no longer, we are the premier company in scientific instruments. They have moved. They're now in consumer products. They've seen it. They've been prepared to shift. We must be prepared to keep moving. Now, as I said, if you're not moving, the life expectancy of your business is likely to be 5 years. So we need to be moving. But, and I've just been reading a book on this subject. I don't read a lot of business books, but this one actually, written by an Indian gentleman, seems to me to be very, very much in my space. It's not top-down innovation, not the big R&D department spending billions with who knows what return on assets. It's bottom-up innovation. It's about finding opportunities. Now, in business, I often ask at conferences, what is the most important department in a business? I'm sure I get the same answer in this room. Do you know who most often puts their hand up when I say, what is the most important department in a business? IT. The IT people put their hand up. Ladies and gentlemen, can I suggest to you there is only one important department in any business? It's called sales. If you are not selling stuff, none of us have a job. It's about selling things. And innovation is about finding new and better ways to sell and new and better things to sell. And IT, CIOs, finance departments, HR managers, and all those people, sales and market, they all exist to support the people out there selling stuff. So I like to think about innovation very simply. Some people talk about some of the, should I say, higher academic institutions talk about strategy, vision, people, culture, mission, etc. And the meld of all these in the Venn diagram provides a thing called innovation. This is ridiculous. It's nonsense. Let me show you how simple this can be. Nothing happens without first an opportunity. We have to find opportunities. What I want to share with you a little later in this presentation is the systematic approach to finding opportunities and how we can do that. We start by finding an opportunity. Then we do our exploration of the opportunity. This is what I call innovation. Then we evaluate the opportunity and we either pass or fail it. Now, there is no sin in picking an opportunity, doing some evaluation and failing. Fast failure is good as long as it's not expensive. I see many inventors. I would probably have every week an inventor comes to me with a product. And these people are so passionate they will not fail. And you know what? I've got a saying. Persistence is an important element of success. You must persist to get there. And when you see a speaker on the podium here saying, I succeeded, they will be saying, I succeeded against all the odds. I had to persist. And that's true. You need to persist. You need to be tough. You need to be brave. But I'll tell you one thing. For every person up there speaking about their success story and their persistence, do you know what? 10,000 have tried and have lost everything they own. We never hear from them, do we? So I've got this saying, persistence is an important element of success. You've got to persist. Persistence is an essential element of failure. You have to know when to stop. And there's no shame in that. That's a good decision. So we evaluate our idea, and it's fail early, fail cheap. If we like it, we go ahead and we go to market. That's the simple process of innovation that I talk about. Now, before I talk about the process of thinking, I'd like to talk about this. Whenever I see a new product or a new service or a new opportunity, the first thing I do is say, where does it fit on this map? There are only two risks in business. And you people in this room will be able to understand this instantly. The first risk is, can I do it? Can I do it? Now, if I said to you, look, I want to put a second battery in this machine here so that if it goes flat, it automatically flips to the next battery, the tech heads in this room would say, yeah, we can do that. That's simple. If I say to you, I want to invent anti-gravity boots so I can wander around the room or the world without any effort, the tech heads are going to say, hold on, this is a big job. This could take 100 years. It could cost $50 billion or more. It's not even possible, perhaps. Technical people can evaluate technical risk. And if you can evaluate it, you can measure it, and you can decide if it's a good idea or not. The single biggest risk in business is market risk. Can I sell it? And the businesses I see that fail, all fail for the same reason. You fail to sell your product. It's that simple. So the secret to this game is to find opportunities and innovation with low market risk. And it's not that hard to do. Now, that doesn't say you don't undertake disruptive innovation. There are a lot of schools of thought saying if you are disrupting, you are taking great risk. That's not necessarily the case. One of the most disruptive technologies in history was television. Now, if somebody came to you and said, I've invented this doodah that allows you to see pictures on your radio, would you think that's high risk? I would say not at all. All I've done is taken a radio and I've improved it to add a picture. There's no risk there at all. But that was probably one of the most disruptive technologies of the early 20th century. Perhaps the internet was a later disruption, which was massively disruptive. So I like to think about products and services where they fit. Now, basically, we've got, on the bottom axis here, low industrial and commercial products. Now, these are products we can measure what we refer to as a value proposition. In other words, if I invest in the product, how much money am I going to get back and what's the return? The second group is consumer products. However do you measure how good they are? Like, it's really just hit and miss. The third one is fashion. Impossible to measure. Bring a fashion to market. One person's idea of a fashion is not another person's. This is every product or service in the world fits into one of those categories. Some fit into all. On the other axis, we have what I call novelty. When you have a new product, a new service, a new IT solution or whatever, we have a thing called novelty. Now, novelty means how new is it? If it's absolutely unprecedented and no one's ever heard of it, you're going to have a lot of trouble getting that off the ground because people don't understand new stuff. In fact, there's a whole school of thought called fast second. You don't have to be first to market. Be second and do it better. Find out what's selling and do it better. There's no risk. So I've developed this simple drawing. Now, some years ago, I ran into a fellow who was actually offered an investment opportunity, what we call a ground floor opportunity for the Rubik's Cube. You know that doodah you turn in all different shapes? The Rubik's Cube. Guess what this fellow said? I don't want to invest in that. Why would you not invest in that? The answer is simple. It's very high novelty and it's sort of fashion and consumer. No one knows what to do with that. It's a dumb idea. But more by good luck than good management, it was a success story. But if I came to you with the first ever shifting spanner, an adjustable spanner that mechanics and tradespeople use, and I've patented this, you would invest in that in an instant. Why? Because it's got industrial applications. I can see the benefit, and more to the point, because it's low novelty, people understand it. And I love the example, which I always talk about, is either the photocopier or the facsimile machine. Remember the old fax machine we all had? Probably we don't now. We use emails and scanning. I asked this question at a conference in India, probably 4 or 5 years ago, to a very, very large gathering of students, and somebody Googled the answer. Google, there's another one. Googled the answer before I'd even had the question finished. The question is, when was the fax machine first patented? First patent lodged for a fax machine was in 1864. It took 100 years to get to market. The computer mouse took 15 years to get to market. The internet took 15 years before we even discovered it. People have trouble with new stuff. So what I like to think about is how we look at products and services in the bottom right-hand corner of that drawing. So that's fundamentally how I look at markets. And as I said, market risk is the single biggest risk in business. What I'd like to do now is talk to you about the process of thinking. A lot of organisations say, okay, we're going to get together and we're going to innovate. Well, what does innovate mean? Great question. So let's develop a definition based on this. Low market risk products are innovated products. If you do a Microsoft Word search of the word innovate, the synonym is change. People only buy products because they see value for money. From this, we get the perfect definition of innovation. Innovation is defined as change that adds value. Change that adds value. There isn't a product, process, or service in the world you cannot innovate. I'm going to show you some examples of this, some ridiculously simple examples. In fact, I think I might even have one in my pocket. I was doing some work. I'm sure I have one. I was doing some work in a far-flung country some years ago, and a company came to me and they said, we're in the business of making certain products. And this product, which I don't seem to have with me, I thought, oh, yes, I do. This product was a tea bag. And we were doing an innovation workshop, and they said to me, you said you can innovate anything. I said, that's correct. And they said, innovate that. So we did. We did. We came up with a better tea bag, and we've lodged patents for it. I'm going to show you how we did that in a moment when we talk about the methodology for thinking. So let's first talk about product innovation. By product, I mean something that's physically tangible, I can pick up and hold. This may look like a very complex drawing. In fact, it is very simple. I've used this in elementary schools. I mean, kids of grade 5 and 6. If I give this product to any group of people, give them 15 minutes, I give them this drawing, give you a product, give you 15 minutes, I can guarantee you will come up with a better product, an innovated product. Then we have a very simple quantitative method to see if it's a good idea. Now, basically, this is a simple array of drawings. It's called a matrix. That's why I refer to my methodology as matrix thinking. If you are selling a product in the market, there are only 4 things you can do to improve your business. And too few people think about this. The first one is the top left-hand one, and I call these the seeds. These are the things you plant in the ground, and then you pour a chemical on called a catalyst, and they're across the top. And an intersection of a seed and a catalyst asks your people, your customers, your friends, or anybody to think, how can I change that like this? And here's some simple examples. We're not getting the laser pointer here. I'm trying to get back to the previous, that matrix. The first one says change, and the ways to think of this are 12 ways here. The first one is future gazing, and I love it when I come to a conference like this. This is an amazing venue. Amazing. But you know what I notice about venues like this? Every venue like this has loudspeakers. Loudspeakers have not changed for 80 or 100 years. I cannot believe there is not a better way to move air than a loudspeaker. And the people at the front here, a lot of noise, and the people at the back here, not so much noise. There's got to be a way to improve a loudspeaker. The next one is I wish. Put a product on the table, I don't care what it is, and get people to simply answer the question, I wish this product would. You get a list of 20 wishes in 5 minutes. Once you've got these wishes, you evaluate them. The next one is re-question. Ask a better question. Often, and I think any engineer would know, when you do a product development, you finish a development, you say, oh boy, I wish I could start and do that again, I'd do it better. The reason, you would ask better questions. And so we go all through these. New function is another one. Every time a new iPhone comes out or a new phone comes out, hasn't it got an additional function? I'll give you an example of new function. There's another one of these here called those initials. If you're IYFHIYDW, that means if you're finding it hard, you're doing it wrong. It means frustration. What annoys me? If you can find a product, process or service that someone's annoyed by, that's a screaming opportunity for innovation. Now, I'll tell you a simple story. In 1987 or thereabouts, I was walking down the street and I heard a man in a hole in the ground swearing, cursing. And I immediately realised this fellow was frustrated. So I went across to him and I said, Sir, what do you do for a living? He said, I repair telephone line faults. I said, interesting. Why are you so angry? He said, because in order to repair a telephone line fault, I have to get out of this hole and I have to get in my car and drive up to 20 kilometres to the other end of the line. And then I've got to do some fiddling there, and then I've got to drive back. And then I've got to do some fiddling here, I've got to drive back. I've got 5 trips to fix every fault. I said, that's interesting. I went away and thought about this. About 6 months later, it hit me. I know how to solve that problem. I developed a solution, a simple IT solution to this problem that meant the fellow only had to make 1 trip. We developed this, we patented it. That was in 1987. The company that makes that product still exists today. And you know what's even better? The telephone company in Australia, Telecom Australia in those days, actually paid for the development. Cost us nothing. And what was even better, when we gave the technicians the product to use, they did an evaluation of this product and they came to the conclusion that every person that had this product had an efficiency gain that paid for it in 10 working days. This is a simple product innovation matrix. It is so simple. You simply go through this drawing with your product and then you look at accessories. Once you're selling a product, do you think about the accessories that you could be selling with it? There are so many companies in the world today that sell nothing more than accessories. Heavens above, how many companies sell accessories for the iPhone or for 4-wheel drive vehicles? These companies only exist because someone first created an opportunity for them. And so it goes on. And one of these here at the end is called transfer. Transfer is a very powerful innovation initiative. It means look at what someone's done in another paradigm and see if you can move it to this paradigm. And there's many, many examples of that, and I'll talk about one. In fact, I'll talk about one we did some years ago. This is an IT solution. In the early 90s, before we all had mobile phones, no one had accurate clocks or watches or time. In fact, in Sydney, the train drivers used their wristwatch to determine if the train was on time. Can you believe that? In 1990. So I happened to be travelling in Europe and I discovered that in Frankfurt there was a radio transmitter that puts out precise time signals. These signals are exceptionally accurate. You're talking microseconds here. And you could buy watches and clocks that would receive this signal and keep perfect time. Now, I thought about this when I got back to Australia, and I came to the conclusion that Australia, you may or may not be that familiar with Australia, we have the most complex time zones anywhere in the world. And in fact, until some years ago, Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne and Tasmania, all on the same north axis, all changed their clocks for summertime on a different month. You could get in an aeroplane and fly 1 hour north to Sydney and land before you left. This was unbelievable, and I thought there's got to be a solution to this. Now, I looked at what they'd done in Europe, and they said they've got an accurate time system. Now, in Frankfurt, the transmitter is a 100 kilowatts. They spend $1 million a year sending that signal out, an accurate time signal. And I thought to myself, how can I send that signal out in Australia and be the king of time? So I did a little exploration. This is called an opportunity. And I discovered the wireless paging network. Remember when we all used to carry pocket pages? And I thought to myself, I approached our telephone authority and I said, folks, I want to send out a time signal from your paging system and make clocks to follow the time so we got accurate time. Because no one in Australia had accurate time. No one in the world had accurate time. You get booked at a parking meter, you could take it to court in 1990 because you couldn't prove the parking meter had the correct time. There's no traceable time standard unless you're in a laboratory. Anyway, the bottom line is the telecom authority said to me, yes, we like your idea, but we don't want to do it. I said, why don't you want to do it? They said, well, because people ring up and get the time at the moment, and we make $26 million a year from people ringing up to get the time. Why would we want to give you this? I said, it's very simple. It's very simple. If you don't give it to me, I'll get your competitor to do it. We're going to take your business anyway. And they thought, yes, you're right. They funded our development. What we ended up doing was creating a mechanism to send out precise time signals from the paging network. Now, you might think, oh, that's pretty obvious and pretty simple, but it was not. It was very complex until we had the aha moment, the innovative insight. Now, I know there's a lot of very clever people in this room. You'll pick this up in 2 seconds. I love to sketch on a whiteboard when I talk about this stuff because it brings it to life. But vision this. I have a radio transmitter. It's a paging network. I'm going to send out a signal with the time. There's a problem. I don't know when my signal is going to go to air because every signal in a paging network is in a queue. And the queue can be from 5 seconds to 7 minutes in length. So I put an accurate time signal in my paging system. I have no idea when it's going to go to air. How do we solve this problem? Every problem has a solution, a simple IT solution. I wonder if anyone can think. It's called differential correction. We use it for GPS before they will stop wobulating the signal. What we created and patented was a very simple technique. We built a whole range of clocks with a paging receiver in them, and we sent out a signal we called a mark. Now, we had no idea what time it was. We just sent that out roughly every hour. The clocks all around Australia received that signal. They didn't know what time it was. But we also received that signal back at the paging station that transmitted it. And because radio waves travel at the speed of light, essentially every clock in Australia received this time signal at the same time. We also received that back at the paging station. We then knew exactly what time the signal was received, correct? So we then sent a correction. We did that every hour. We sent a mark, and then when we got the signal, we sent out a correction. Clock, you know that mark you received, the exact time at that point was so-and-so, and the clock's corrected. So we started selling clocks, and these clocks were big digital clocks and analogue clocks. And every hour we sent them a signal. And we were selling clocks for 15 years until everyone started embracing mobile phones with great accurate time on them. And you know what? Our guarantee was, if your clock is ever 1 second out, we will refund your money. And we never ever refunded anyone any money. We corrected the time for every time zone in Australia and even for leap seconds. This was stunningly simple. These things don't have to be complex. So these are the things you do. Now, the last thing you do when you've done your innovation and you're doing the evaluation of your product or your service or whatever it is, you look at the bottom thing there. It may be difficult to see from the people close up here. It's called consequential change. Before you put your product, process or service in the market, think about the consequences. What was the consequences? What was the consequences of Apple introducing the iPhone? They killed the iPod. The iPhone could carry all the music. You didn't need an iPod. So the consequential effect of introducing the iPhone was to kill the iPod. Now, they knew this was going to happen, and that's when they brought out the little iNano. They'd provided value in a different form. Their value provision was in size, not functionality. It was in the design. Now, that's a product innovation matrix. I want to get back to this in a moment. The next one is called an opportunity matrix. Now, folks, believe me, this is where I spend all my time. This is the most valuable drawing. The seeds of opportunity are down the right, left-hand side there. Now, we have to first start by saying, what is an opportunity? Can anyone tell me what the word opportunity means? Now, it's a big forum. I don't expect an answer. But people struggle with this difficult word. The dictionary defines opportunity as a fortunate intersection of events. Now, folks, I don't want my business to be fortunate to succeed. I want certainty. So I've redefined the word opportunity. Opportunity we define as an observed, fortunate set of circumstances. We need to learn to observe. So what I do is I work in many companies and I teach people what to observe and how to observe. I can promise you right now, if you walk around this room or this hotel, in fact, twice since I've been in this marvellous hotel, this has got to be one of the nicest hotels I think I've ever stayed in. Twice I've observed things that could be improved. Twice I've spoken to management, and twice management has been overjoyed that I was able to bring simple things to their attention. Why do I do this? Because I've learned to observe. I'm not criticising this hotel. This is a marvellous facility. But we can always do better. There are 5 things we observe if we want to find an opportunity, and this is what I teach people. You see, opportunities don't occur in nature. When Archimedes jumped in his bath and observed that his body displaced that amount of water, he observed that, but it's been happening for 1 million years. When an apple fell on Isaac Newton's head, he was the first guy to say, hold on, things fall to the earth. What does that mean? And he started to think about gravity. The second one is called widespread activity. There are a lot of people that say, and some of the so-called gurus of innovation say, if you want to find an opportunity, find a frustration and fix it. Well, folks, it ain't that simple. There's no good solving a problem if the problem's not worth solving. For example, biros or ballpoint pens don't work in outer space. You've got to use a pencil or a crayon. Now, is it worth spending your effort trying to develop a biro or a fountain pen that's going to work in space? Of course not. There's 13 astronauts. How big's the market? If you're going to find an opportunity, make sure it's widespread. Now, I'll give you an example. I had an inventor come to me some years ago. This is a true story. And this guy had invented, he'd patented, he'd tooled, he'd manufactured, and he was about to start advertising on television. A device that puts suntan lotion on your back. This was his invention. He'd spent a fortune on it. And he came to me and he said, I've got this idea. And he said, it's an invention. And he said, I'm trying to put suntan lotion on my back. but no one wants to buy my invention. He said, what can you help me? I said, I can. Get a girlfriend. You don't need one of them. You need someone to put lotion on your back. Another one of these is called repetition. If something's repetitious, there is enormous opportunity. And I was talking with a company out here that does asset management, asset protection. There is vast opportunities in this business. I did some work in Australia many years ago with telephone poles. In Australia, there are 6 million telephone poles. Nobody is allowed to climb a telephone pole until they have read the pole inspector's report to make sure it's safe. How do you do that? This was in 1989. There was a huge opportunity for just in telephone poles for asset management, asset protection. The next one's called trends. If you plot a trend line in any industry, you can find opportunities. If you just extrapolate the line, there's futurists, you hear futurists talk, and they talk about what it might be like in the future. Folks, I don't have to do that. I just get a graph and I plot the past and extrapolate to where the future's heading. It's very easy to find where the next over-the-horizon opportunity is if you do some extrapolation. And I'll give you some examples of this. And the last one is called comparative activity. If you have a group of people doing the same thing and you compare them, you will find some people do it better than others. There'll be a Sachin Tendulkar in every team. You go and watch what they're doing. Watch what is it they've got that's special. And then you train your other people to try and gain some of the talent that they have. You won't bring them up to that level, but you will certainly bring them up a notch, simply by looking at somebody who's good and comparing. Now, I'll give you some examples of where we've used this, and this is, look, folks, promise you, this is the most powerful drawing. I have another drawing here. This is for service innovation, for service companies, and many companies here are service businesses. And there's another one here for process innovation. Where are we pointing to get this? That's for process innovation. And I've even got a matrix drawing to create a matrix drawing. If you haven't solved a problem, then you can create a matrix drawing to solve a problem. And the beautiful thing about these simple diagrams is it gets everyone on the same page. But let's get back to this innovation matrix, opportunity. I want to give you an example here of some of the stuff we've done. Clocks was one of them. A recent thing I did in Europe. Envisage this. A company, a £30 million company, they make plastic oil tanks. That's their entire business. £30 million a year they're selling in plastic tanks. Now in Europe, everyone heats their houses with water supplied from oil. And if you start to explore one of these catalysts, the one called tracking means follow people and watch what happens. Watch how they curse, watch how they get excited, watch what switches them on. It's called tracking. I can tell you now, a lot of people say, oh, go and ask your customers what they want. Well, I can tell you now, in many cases, customers don't know what they want. And more to the point, they don't even know what's possible. I think as Henry Ford said, if you asked people what they wanted in 1890, they would have said faster horses. They didn't even know what was possible. I don't go and ask people, I watch people. This is all about observation. Now let's get back to our oil tanks. We're talking about oil tanks. One of the problems with oil tanks is that they get empty and then the oil company's got to rush in and fill the tank with oil. Fine. But there's a thing called bill shock. Somebody suddenly gets a bill for their oil heating for £1,500 or more. Now, they're not expecting a bill anything like this. They're shocked. They can't pay it. They've got to pay it off. So we recognised this was a customer problem. So the oil tank company said to me, we are facing competition. What can we do? We found out bill shock was a problem. So we did some work and we came up with a little IT solution. We developed a device about that big. And what it was, and it wasn't rocket science, well actually it was quite complex as it ended up. It was an ultrasonic level sensor for tanks. So people could put this on their oil tank and it would tell you when the oil tank was needing filling. This device was no bigger than this. We could make it for $30. It was license free and it would transmit a signal 300 metres to a base station in the house, which would be internet connected back to the tank company. Now this was a pretty smart device because not only could it measure the level, which is not that difficult to do, it was intrinsically safe, which meant you could use it in an explosive environment, but even better, it could measure level to within a few centimetres of the sender. That's not easy to do. We solved all these problems and started having a business that says oil tank companies can now provide this, but here's the kicker. The question is, what's the route to market? If you're going to sell a product, you need to have a route to market. What was a special way we could sell this? And the answer was pretty simple. We did a thing at the last catalyst there called transfer. We said, who are the best people in the world at signing customs up for contracts? And the answers, of course, are telecom companies. You go to a telco, they'll give you a telephone if you sign a contract for 2 or 3 years, correct? So we said, fine. Why don't we go to the oil companies, the number 2 in fact, because the number 1 felt they didn't need any help. You go to the number 2 oil company and say, we will give you this device. You can now contract your people to make sure you deliver the oil every time it's needed. And the beautiful thing about this is, not only did we avoid bill shock, but we also stopped the oil companies overcharging. You know, we delivered 400 gallons, but actually we delivered 350, but you wouldn't know because you don't know how much oil's in your tank. We stopped overcharging and we got the oil companies connected. But then we took the next innovation. The next innovation was even better. The oil companies were giving this device to the customer as long as they signed up. But we got a bit smarter. What's the next model? The next model is what is important. People in this room are all CIOs. Big data is the answer, correct? We stopped giving these to the oil companies. We now collect the data. We now know everybody in the UK who needs oil. We sell the data to the lowest or the highest bidder, depending on who it is. We are now the repositories of data for oil collections. So it's an information technology solution that removes bill shock for customers. This is not difficult stuff to do if you start to think about the customer and think about how you can innovate a solution to the customer. Now let's get back to our tea bag. I said before, there is no product, process or service you can't innovate. And the company in South America came to me with a tea bag and said, folks, we make tea bags. What are you going to do about a tea bag? Great question. So we looked at this drawing. We said, what's a predictable, repetitious, widespread activity about tea bags? What's the customer experience with tea bags? Now, I don't know how many tea drinkers there are in this room. I think tea is quite popular in India. What you find with tea is a magnificent cup of tea happens when you brew it in a teapot, correct? You put your tea leaves in there or 5 or 6 tea bags and you pour your boiling water in and you brew the tea and you pour it out. It's a beautiful cup of tea, true? What's the difference? This is called comparison down the bottom. It's called tracking. Watch what people do and compare a tea bag with a teapot. What's the difference? The difference is very simple. We put our tea bag in the teapot. We pour boiling water in it. We jiggle it up and down a few times. The colour all comes out, not the flavour, the colour. And after 30 seconds, we're happy with the colour. We pull it out and we've got a cup of tea. We haven't. We've got a cup of coloured hot water. The difference is that when you brew tea, you wait 4 or 5 minutes for it to brew. With a tea bag, you wait 30 seconds. The difference was time. Once we discovered that, the question is, what do we now do? How do we put a clock on a tea bag? Any ideas? We did it for no money. It cost nothing. We put a clock in a tea bag. Thermochromatic ink. Ink that changes colour after it's been exposed to a certain temperature for a certain period of time. So you put your tea bag in the teapot, you pour your hot water in, you wait till the tea bag changes colour, which could be 4 or 5 minutes, and then you pull it out and you know you've got a good cup of tea. That's a classic example of finding an opportunity and innovating a solution. Folks, there are thousands of these. There were so many, you just don't know where to start. I'll give you another example. I was doing some work in Istanbul. Istanbul, I've got to say, is a wonderful city. If you're ever looking for a place to visit, it is a marvellous place to visit. I was doing some work at a very large white goods company. Now, these people made washing machines, and they made dishwashers and all that stuff. And the exercise, we had a group of product engineers and a group of customers, and the task was this. They said, I said to them, we're going to innovate a front-loading washing machine. Innovate meaning change it in some way to add value. We got 30 people in the room, and the boss stood up and he said, "Oh, whoa, stop. If you're going to innovate a front-loading washing machine, where do you start? What are we going to start with? The knobs, the colour, the length of the cord, etc., etc., etc.? How do you start?" Excellent question. Said, let's do an innovation and opportunity matrix on this. Let's look at the predictable, widespread, repetitious activities of people using this product, using a front-loading washing machine. I want people to go down the I wish column. I wish this machine would. I want them to go down the if you're finding it hard problem. What is the biggest annoyance about this machine? I want you to track the people, and I want you to list the annoyances. I want you to list the wishes. And when you've all done that, which took fully 10 minutes, we'll compare them. We'll find the biggest wish, the biggest frustration, and we'll put them together. And the biggest wish and biggest frustration is the answer. So what do you think it might have been? The biggest problem people experience with front-loading washing machines is having to bend over to put their stuff in and take it out. That was expressed as the biggest problem. We now had somewhere to start. So we now go back to the product innovation matrix. Heavens above. The product innovation matrix, and say we're going to innovate the washing machine. We're going to do a thing called re-question. Re-question means ask a better question. It means why bend over? Why bend over? The answer is you don't have to. How do we fix that? Real simple. Lift the washing machine off the ground. Bring it up 800 centimetres or thereabouts, 500, 600 centimetres. Lift it off the ground. Suddenly we've overcome the biggest problem. But you know what's even better? In overcoming that problem, we've created a new product. It's a new product that goes under the washing machine to lift it off the ground. And this is a place you can now store your goods. Your soap powders and your detergents and your whatever, you can now store them. So not only did we solve the single biggest problem with the front-loading washing machine, we created a new product at the same time. This is just an example of how you can use this opportunity matrix. I'll give you one in marketing. Nothing happens till we sell something, and of course marketing is, in the IT business, big data and marketing is everything. Of course, we have to learn how to interpret big data because so often we get it wrong. I'll give you a great example. I saw a professor in Holland giving this great talk, and I thought this was pretty interesting. He talked about dolphins. Have you ever heard dolphins or porpoises saving fishermen that are stranded at sea? Have you ever heard about this? A fisherman there might be 10 fishermen on a boat and they all get in the water because the boat sinks. And guess what? The dolphin picks them up and pushes them into shore. And the dolphin says, wow, The fisherman says, wow, dolphins save fishermen. Isn't this a marvellous thing? So everyone concludes dolphins save fishermen. Well, you know what? They did an experiment with dolphins. They got a number of dolphins and they put them in a pool. And they threw a ball in the pool, a big rubber ball. And you know what happened? The dolphins love pushing the ball. They push it this way and this way and this way and that way. Dolphins love pushing stuff. And you know what they suddenly came to realise? Dolphins was pushing just as many fishermen further out to sea as they were into shore. The only people that were saved was the ones that came into shore. So we collected data from them and conclude dolphins save fishermen. That's nonsense. Dolphins push stuff. That's the message. They don't save fishermen. Some fishermen happen to get pushed into shore. Incredible. So we can talk about this type of thing on innovation and different ways we think about it. As I said, we've talked about the front-loading washing machine. We've talked about putting time signals on a paging service. I want to talk about another thing, a marketing exercise. Now, in many cases, the IT people do their marketing. And they do marketing by collecting data, by observing what websites people are looking at and those sorts of things. And they collect information and then they target market. And that is a very valid your company and many, many companies work by doing this. But there are many cases where in order to get a sale, you must get the person to try your product. So here's an example of how you can do that. If you start to look at these, this matrix, the opportunity matrix, this one. Here's an example of some work we did in a very small chocolate company. These people made magnificent chocolates. They were beautiful chocolates. It's about a $10 million business. They cannot afford to advertise. How do you compete with the big guys, the Nestles and the Lints and the Cadbury and so on? You can't compete with these people. They didn't want to get into supermarkets because they just get pushed down, their prices get pushed down and they lose their any opportunity for profit. So the exercise we had to do with them was, how do we get to 100% of our target market, but we can't afford to spend a cent on advertising? The answer was simple, very simple. We base it on one simple known fact. Now, I don't know how many ladies are in the audience here. It's very hard to tell, actually. I'm sure there are some ladies. 83% of high-quality chocolates are bought by ladies. You probably can believe that. If there's any lady in the room, I'm sure she would agree. In fact, guys, if you don't know it, most ladies have a secret stash of chocolate somewhere at home that you don't even know exists. This is very common. Very common. Anyway, back to the point. 83% of chocolates are bought by ladies. The question is, how do we get the ladies to try our chocolates? The answer is very simple. You look at the predictable, widespread and repetitious activities of those ladies in the target group. Now, these are ladies who can afford good chocolates. So what is predictable, repetitious and widespread about that market segment? Any ideas? I don't expect an answer. It's too big a forum. The answer is simple. And if you do this in a workshop, you always get the right answer very quickly. These ladies in Australia, I believe in India it's more frequent. In Australia, these ladies go to the hairdresser every 6 weeks. In India, I believe it's every week because hairdressing is very cheap. Now, I don't know what ladies do at the hairdresser for 2 or 3 or 4 hours, but whatever it is, they must enjoy it because they seem to do it often enough and it costs a fortune. So a lady goes to a hairdresser, she sits down, and the first thing that happens is that they bring out a cup of coffee or a glass of wine or a cup of tea. Now, we want these ladies to try a chocolate. So guess what? We came up with a very simple campaign where not only do we bring out their cup of tea, we bring out one of their chocolates. Now, hairdressers don't want to sell chocolates, but we give them a little card with a chocolate on it. So now the lady, and this is 100% of our target market, gets to try our chocolate. They eat our chocolate and say, I like that chocolate. And they read the card. And it talks about the health benefits of dark chocolate. It talks about our little company and da-da-da-da-da. And you know what else it says? If you take this card around the corner, the convenience shop around the corner now sells our chocolates. And guess what? They now want to sell our chocolates. They now want to stock them because the hairdresser's sending customers there. In this way, we've got to 100% of our target market without spending a few cents on free chocolates. And it's even better than that because we can now measure how effective this is, because the retailer has to return these cards in order to get his 10% rebate. And so it goes on. Look, I've got a few minutes. I just want to give a couple of other silly little examples of some of the things I do. I look at this sort of stuff, predictable, widespread, repetitious activities, and I'm sure there's people here in the power industry, in the auto industry and so on. Let me give you some real simple stuff I've calculated. In a country, now a car brake light, when you put your brakes on in the car, you use energy. 40 watts, typically, of energy when you put your foot on the brake. In a city like Istanbul, a population of 14.5 million, every single day in the city of Istanbul alone, there is 300 megawatt hours of energy used on car brake lights. Just in that one city. If you extrapolate that across the world, you're going to find you need 20 of the biggest power stations on Earth, the solar ones. These things are 400 acres and cost $250 million each. You need 20 of them just to provide enough energy for car brake lights for just 20 of the biggest cities. Our demands for energy are astonishing. And this comes out of looking at the predictable, widespread, repetitious activities and observing. Now I've patented a new car brake light based on this knowledge. How about this one? Here's one, an IT solution, screaming out for an IT solution. I did a very simple calculation. When you do a credit card purchase, which is very common certainly in the Western world, you get two pieces of paper. You get a tax invoice and you get a receipt from the credit card. True? And most often they staple them together. So you've got one thing to carry, right? Folks, I can tell you right now, there are 22,000 tonnes of staples used annually for that very purpose only. 22,000 tonnes, and it takes 6 megawatt hours of electricity to make 1 tonne of steel to make staples. And that forgets the distribution costs. When you print out your credit card receipt, in Australia alone, we print out 1.7 million kilometres of credit card receipts. For the world, it's 3,400 million kilometres of paper just on credit card receipts. Forget the staple. What's the simple IT solution? Put it in the cloud. Do you know the biggest problem retailers have? You take a product back and say, I want a warranty claim, and they say, where's your receipt? Oh, I haven't got it. I bought it 8 months ago. Sorry, sir, madam, there's no claim without a receipt. Why don't you just put it in the cloud? Not only that, when you've done that, you've now got all the data you need on the customer, because you've got everything you know about them is in the cloud. You can access that. The IT opportunities here, of course, are endless. I don't need to tell people in this room, you're all experts in this area. This is a process I use. I teach people how to use this. I do workshops. I've done a lot of this in banks. The stuff we did in Malaysia in banking was incredible. Found out how to put a branch in every city in Malaysia without opening a single branch. Incredible outcome. How to raise letters of credits for virtually no cost. Simple things. So what's my message to you? The message is innovation, defined as change that adds value. opportunity defined as an observed, fortunate set of circumstances. Ladies and gentlemen, there is nothing in this world you cannot innovate or perish. You've got a 5-year horizon if you are not constantly moving your customers, products and services to an ever better place. Thank you very much.